Today we'll be talking about science selfies and what we do next in the scientific process. So up to this point, we have already done the observation. We've already established a question. You've already researched and came up with a hypothesis, and then you investigated that hypothesis with your own data collection. So as you can see, the first letter of each of these statements starts with the same letters as selfies. We have spent the past few weeks looking into the topic and formulating a hypothesis as to what material you wanted to use for your prototype or what kind of prototype you wanted to do. Then the investigate the hypothesis. So that was your actual experimentation, where in class we came up with different parachutes to test or different materials to test and things like that. And then we examined the data. You analyzed it, did a reflection, and figured out which material to be the best prototype. So we've gone through the steps of the scientific process, and now we're at the last S, that last part of selfie, the share your results. The whole reason we as scientists can move on and can make these new advancements is because we share our results, we share our analyses with other people around the world. It's why we have cell phones. It's why we're able to go to Mars. So you're going to do that next step. You need to figure out a way to share your results. So since we've done our final test with our prototype, you've launched it with the rocket, and we know the results, it's now time to analyze that data. So on Google Classroom, you will find a rubric as well as a reflection. I'll talk about the reflection in a minute. At this point, you should have 2 reflections that you will have completed. The one from when we first finished our experiment with determining which parachute to use or which material to use or which fins to use. There was that reflection. If you haven't done that, you need to do that now. And then there's also the final reflection, where after we've launched our prototype, we observe and analyze how it did and what changes we'll make in the future. And that's only part of it. So that's that E part of the selfie, the examining the data. And we still need to get to that S. And so the way that you present your information and your results to the world is up to you. You can choose to do a website. You can choose to do a Prezi or a PowerPoint. You can choose to do a video, like an ad. You can choose a poster. You can write an essay or a scientific journal article, because that's how scientists frequently share the information. Those are all choices that you have. And maybe there's another option that I didn't consider that maybe you would like to do. You just need to get it okayed with me. I would like you to be aware that if you choose the poster or you choose the Prezi, that you actually have to stand up in front of the class and present that information. If you do the essay, the website, or the video, you do not have to present. Please be aware that your final project is due on November 28th and November 29th, depending on if you're an A-day student or a B-day student. This means that your website and your presentation will occur on those days. So please don't come to school on the 28th or 29th without those things done. So what does your project need to have in it? Well, first and foremost, you need to define all 3 of Newton's laws of motion. The goal is to send this out to anybody, and whether they are a scientist or not, we should be able to make sure everybody's on the same page. So you need to have the definition of all 3 laws. And then more importantly, you need to be able to identify which law applies where. So when in the rocket and the landing did we see the first law? When did we see the second? And so on. You'll also need to identify the balanced, unbalanced forces working on your rocket and your prototype through the launch as well as the landing. If you are unsure of what these are, I have some worksheets in class for you that you can utilize. There's also many resources online. Which brings me to the next point. You need to have 3 credible and scholarly resources that you utilize in your analysis or through your design process. So some of you researched the best parachute material. Whatever you used to figure that out needs to be cited. Or if you looked up the forces acting on a rocket, you need to cite those things. So you need to have at least 3 credible and scholarly sources. We are not considering Wikipedia scholarly. So please don't use Wikipedia. Any other source, there's a lot on the library's website that you can use. Again, if you're not sure what to do, please see me and we can help you figure it out. And we would like for your citations to be in APA format, not MLA. It's just better for scientific writing. If you are unsure of how to use APA format or how to find resources, please see me or Mrs. St. Clair in the library, and we can get you set up with that. The last couple of points that we want to make sure that you include in your analysis is a summary of your reflections from your labs. How did your design change over the time? How did you do this? What were your thoughts? Things like that. And you should include the data, your class data, as well as your own personal data and graphs to support this evidence. And then, as always, the Stonehill writing expectations also need to be included in your project. And last but not least, we have the actual rubric. It's set up in such a way that each of the laws and each of the skills that we're looking for is separated. My goal is for everybody to be at a 3, that you can define the law and you can relate that law to the rocket's motion. That means you've met the standard, and I'm very happy with 3s across the board, but please be aware that 3s across the board puts you at a 75 or an 80. So if you would like to have a higher score, you need to make sure that you're trying to reach that level 4. That not only can you identify and define the laws and explain how they apply to your rocket, but you can relate them to other things that we've talked about, like energy in particular. How does the energy influence or change through the rocket and the prototype's landing? You'll also get 2 points for having 3 sources and making sure that they're cited appropriately, and you'll get 2 points for using the Stonehill writing expectations. So please make sure that you've done those things. You'll notice that the reflection is not on this rubric because that is a separate grade for 10 points. It is also on the Mars poster project paper with this rubric. Just check that rubric for more explanation and clarity on the reflection. As always, if you have any questions, please email me, Instagram me, talk to me and ask me those questions before it is too late, because again, this is due on November 28th and November 29th.